let's talk about organ transplantation from the perspective of a living kidney donor. This video is going to be dedicated to talking about the first few days in the hospital after you've had a kidney donation surgery. To start, let's talk about what the experts say about what kidney donation surgery is like. If we look at the National Kidney Foundation, their entire description of your days after the hospital from a physical sensation standpoint is after leaving the hospital, the donor will typically feel tenderness, itching, and some pain as the incision continues to heal. As you can imagine, this isn't entirely comprehensive. Let's look at what Johns Hopkins has to say. During recovery, you will experience some pain and discomfort. This should be easily relieved with either a prescribed medication or over-the-counter pain relievers. While there are some good reasons for organizations like this not to delve into a whole lot of detail on what your post-surgery feelings will be, it was an area in which I found a real lack of description and where I really wanted to have more information before going into surgery. First, it takes a few hours after your surgery for the anesthesia to really wear off and for the true pain to set in. What this feels like is, at least for me, it felt like a really intense muscular soreness mixed with a bloating, as though I drank tons and tons of water. So it felt as though I had done a million Russian twists all to my right-hand side, and then maybe went dirt biking or some really physically intensive exercise that I don't usually do, and then you wake up 2 days later just sore and stiff. It was also difficult to take like a full deep breath. Mixed with all that, as there's been such trauma to your body that, at least for me, my back, my shoulders, my legs were all super tense, and it took quite a while to get them to relax. Along with that feeling that it's difficult to take a full breath, well, they gave me a device called an incentive spirometer, and this is a little device that you exhale into, and it gauges how your lung capacity is doing, and it's essentially just a challenge to get yourself to take those full breaths and really exercise the muscles and make sure that any fluid collecting in the bottom of your lungs is being aerated and expelled, and so you're lessening your chances of pneumonia, as well as giving yourself a bit of a workout with the muscles that were just damaged. On the whole, I'd rate the pain at a level 5 to 6, usually actually going from a 3-4 up until maybe 6 at nighttime. So I'd wake up, I'd feel pretty good. As the day kind of wears on, I'd need more of the painkillers and then go to sleep a little bit more sore. My eyelids were really heavy. I would be having a conversation with someone and not even realize that my eyes had been closed the entire time. Mixed up with that was a complete loss of a sense of time. I would have no idea how long I'd been talking to someone, how long I'd been asleep, how long it had been since I ate. And I think overall that contributes to a kind of lack of remembering exactly what happened in the hospital. Along with that, my throat wasn't really sore. It was just kind of dry or parched, and so it made it really nice to be able to drink water, and especially ice chips. Ice chips were the best. And then the other one was that I remember I was very worried that I'd be hungry the whole time, because you're fasted before surgery, then it's liquids only for a time after that. But really this wasn't a problem. Between the bloating, the soreness, the exhaustion, the overall sensation would change throughout the few days I was in the hospital. It moves locations from kind of being local to my side to being a full body stiffness to some shoulder pain as a residual of having your diaphragm aggravated. There wasn't ever any scary stabbing, pulling, pinching sensation. You're overall still really pretty useless your first few days, maybe even your first week. You're able to walk once you're set up with your IV pole and all that, but you cannot sit up on your own. You can't really even roll over in bed very easily. You're pretty helpless, and you're going to need some support from either really attentive nurses and nurse assistants or from a loved one close at hand. So what are you hooked up to when you wake up? For me, I had a nasal cannula, so that's supplying oxygen in a little tube. Those tubes don't go down your nose or anything. It's just a really short tube that just tucks right into the base of your nostrils. I had an EKG, which are all the monitors kind of taped all over your torso. Did wake up with an IV in my arm that was supplying me both saline solution and whatever drugs they needed to give me, a urinary catheter, and then compression stockings just at the, from my knees down to my ankles. Through the IV in my arm, I was given a PCA pump, which are those buttons that you're able to press to self-dispense painkillers. And I'm pretty sure that I was hooked up to Dilaudid. I didn't ever max that out except for at nighttime again when my pain would get higher and I just wanted to get to sleep and have a good night's sleep. That's the only time that I would max out the dosage that was allotted to me. So I did notice that coinciding with my increase of the use of the PCA pump or the Dilaudid in the evening time, my kind of O2 levels, my blood pressure, my heart rate would all dip a little bit low enough that my oxygen was down in the low mid 90s, which was not something that the doctors were keen on seeing at the time that they discharged me. So that factor was really what drove me staying that extra night. Again, at no point was I all that scared. I was actually extremely relaxed at the time, but it really helped when I was weaned off or, deliberately lowered my dose of that Dilaudid. So I did have a couple hiccups in recovery. I'm not sure that they even qualify as real complications or if it's just a matter of how my body reacted to the anesthesia, but it led me to taking 3 nights in the hospital instead of just the 2 that I was originally told to plan for. First of all, you're told that in recovery, your goals are to walk as you feel comfortable and stay hydrated. Well, when you first wake up from surgery, you can't go out walking, and so I focused on staying hydrated. Well, I was drinking loads of water, eating a bunch of ice chips at the same time that they were pumping me full of saline solution. Usually this wouldn't be a problem, and for the first 24 hours when your urinary catheter is in place, it isn't a problem at all. However, anesthesia works, it tends to take the longest to alleviate its paralytic properties on your smooth muscles. What that means is 24 hours after the surgery, when my urinary catheter was taken out, my smooth muscles weren't fully awake yet, and yet I had an extremely full bladder. And so that was actually the greatest amount of pain in the entire recovery process, was really badly needing to pee, not physically being able to, and a fleet of nurses came in to deliberate how badly I needed to be catheterized, how to catheterize me, and at one point they finally said, we're gonna have to call the surgeon in here once he gets out of surgery to help you, and I didn't like the sound of that, so I took matters into my own hands, and after a lot of mental exercise, finally managed to use the bathroom on my own. It sounds really stupid, but it was actually the only amount of pain that got bad enough that I actually cried because of it. Again, wasn't anything scary per se, and it's not a foreign pain, but it was really, really frustrating and really quite painful for the few hours that I was grappling with that. So my advice for anyone going through a relatable surgery is just keep in mind, even if they tell you stay hydrated, of course that's important, listen to your doctors before you listen to me, but if you're being hydrated through an IV, you may not necessarily also need to drink liters of water. At one point in time, they also gave me insulin and potassium. I assume that it's just because they were measuring my blood levels or something and decided that that was something I needed. It may have also been a complication due to the spironolactone that I'm on, which is a potassium-sparing diuretic. Most of my time in the hospital was spent sleeping or walking. It was actually disorienting to look at a screen for a long time, so I ended up either looking out the window, falling asleep on my own, listening to the TV. I would go on about 3 to 4 walks a day. You know, when I first started out, I could barely get down the hallway and back, but by the end of it, I was feeling pretty comfortable walking at more and more normal speeds. It was hard afterwards, again, that soreness feeling. It was hard to stand up straight and hard to take like full breaths. Any kind of exertion would exaggerate those pains. So that's when you talk about, walking at your limit. That was that kind of sensation that ended up limiting my walking distance for those first few days. Also in the hospital, of course, it's really exciting whenever you get to talk to a member of the transplant team. And so whenever I saw one of them, I would ask, how is the recipient doing? Again, the recipient was a stranger, so it's not like a family member that I can just call up and ask. And they made it pretty clear that once the organ is out of your body, you are not privy at all to that medical information. And so even though I wanted to know, is my kidney doing her job, or was there an acute rejection? How is the recipient just recovering from surgery, let alone whether the organ works or not? They were very reserved about telling me anything until I assumed they got permission from the recipient and their family that they let me know before I was discharged that the kidney had taken, it was a success story, and had produced 10 liters of urine in just the first day. And for anyone on dialysis, I think it's clear that's all toxic waste, essentially, that's being cleaned out of this person's system who's dealing with dialysis that's working for them right away. So I was very grateful that I got to leave the hospital with a feeling that I had accomplished my mission. When it comes to being discharged from the hospital, really what they're looking for is that your cardiovascular system is totally happy, functioning on its own, and 2, that your digestive system has entirely woken up from anesthesia. For me, it was pretty uneventful. I was wheeled in a wheelchair down to the main floor and then actually caught a shuttle out to a hotel that was just a few blocks away, because the hospital that I had the transplant in was several hours from home, and so I needed to wait another few days in the hotel before gearing up to be ready for the drive home. Please post any questions or comments that you have for me down in the comments below. I'm really hoping to make this a useful resource for anyone who's curious about the topic, interested in donating on their own, in a position where they need to start asking for loved ones whether they'd consider donating a kidney, medical professionals that are looking for a first-hand patient experience, or anyone who's simply curious about the state of organ donation in the United States today.